organization that represents about 90 plus members who are scattered throughout Lancaster. And a lot of people don't know about us. Has anyone ever heard about the League of Women Voters? Just one. Okay. I actually have some brochures to hand out, and that'll give you a glimpse of the work that we do. We have a national organization, a statewide, and then most counties have a local chapter. Our league set out to do something really special in that we partnered with the Lancaster Public Library to apply for a grant, a national grant with the National Endowment for the Arts. And we pretty much did this thinking we won't get it, but let's try, right? Lo and behold, 6 months after the application, we got the call that we were one of 70 communities across the United States that embark on a book discussion. And we got to select the book of our choice. The book of our choice is Into the Beautiful North by NEA. And you'll hear some information in terms of how our panelists are viewing the why we chose the book, the relevance of why we chose the book as well. So I'm going to introduce our panelists, and consequently they all serve on the board of the League of Women Voters and have been just an incredible force in terms of the work that we do. Susana Cortina was lucky enough to have been born in Cuba and raised in Puerto Rico. An aspiring attorney since she was very little, she began practicing something akin to law, representing fellow students in her second grade class. Ms. Cortina has worked as an adjunct professor in a number of universities and has loved every single minute of it. She earned her JD in 1985 from the University of Puerto Rico School of Law and her MA and PhD from the University of Iowa. Her dissertation analyzed whether privatizing water services led to greater access for the poor in Bolivia and Puerto Rico. Ms. Cortina is admitted to the bars of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which means that she can pretend to be bilingual, as well as various other federal courts. Carrie Carranza is an immigration legal counselor and advocacy liaison for Church World Services. She is a J.P. McCaskey graduate who went on to graduate from Messiah College with a Bachelor of the Arts degree in Sociology, Anthropology, and Spanish. She is now a partially accredited representative with the Department of Justice and represents clients to the Department of Homeland Security. She is a daughter of immigrants and is passionate about cultivating a welcoming community for all. In 2016, Carrie co-founded Invisible Americans, an advocacy campaign that tells immigrant stories in an attempt to humanize rather than politicize immigration. Carrie McCullough has been working professionally in the nonprofit sector since 2010, specifically focusing on family welfare and humanitarian efforts. Currently, she serves as Orphan Care Coordinator for Brittany's Hope, where she oversees the humanitarian aid program. Working closely with partners in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Vietnam, she advocates for children and communities in need. Carrie received her undergraduate degree in history from Millersville University in 2017, and her master's degree in public administration from Widener University in 2014, following an internship with the U.S. Department Consulate in Naples, Italy. Please help me in welcoming our esteemed panel. So to give you an idea, a sense of what Into the Beautiful North encompasses, and I'm sorry I only have one copy, but I'll let you kind of get a feel for it as well. Into the Beautiful North is a quest novel in the grand tradition. Though there are no medieval knights, magic rings, or lightsabers within its pages, author Luis Alberto Urrea sets the novel in the present day, in the highly charged world of the US-Mexico border region. There are 6 characters in the book, and it's pretty much based on one young woman who decides to go to a local theater in her hometown of Tres Camarones, and decides that the Magnificent Seven and the quest that they took in that movie is something that she wants to do in order to find her father, who traveled to the north, as well as other men from the town, who is very troubled with crime and kind of mayhem. And so Nayeli and her friends actually traveled to the north and across the border to do that. Our organization is partnering with about 15 nonprofits across Lancaster so that residents of Lancaster and people who work at the nonprofits can actually read the book and have book discussions. We're going to bring Luis Alberto Urrea to Lancaster County in May of 2018. So there will be like 8 months of reading this book across Lancaster before the author actually arrives. And so I'd like for us to feel comfortable to ask questions of the panelists after they give their responses, and we'll do a little fun exercise, I hope, at the end of the panel as well. And then yes. Yes, yeah. So ladies, if you could all kind of share with us why you feel that the NEA Big Read, this initiative, is important to the work that the League of Women Voters is doing, especially now, and how you feel this book selection is vital to our community. And we can begin anyway, whoever wants to go first.
I'll start. So I was on the panel that helped choose this book. And the things that really resonated with me and why I thought it was a good pick for the community was not only the immigration story that's within the story within the story, but also the humanistic journey that this group goes on that is intrinsic, like everybody can relate to them. It doesn't, you don't have to be a 19-year-old girl from Mexico. I, as you know, a 30-something-year-old, related to this group's journey because it's just a human journey, and I thought that it was really topical between what they went through and putting a human side on their immigration story, as well as you know, the human side of them as people.
Yeah, I've been on the board now for I think almost 3 years, and so the League of Women Voters aims to partner with other organizations. So I thought it was just a good opportunity to partner with the library, but then also in the book discussions we're doing, strengthen our partnerships with other organizations. But the League also, you know, part of our mission is to get people civically engaged, and immigration is one of the hottest political topics lately. Since 2016, it's really become more and more relevant, and we see it more and more in the forefront of our political platform. So I thought it was a good pick as well, just because as we're trying to involve people with political discourse, and then just for me personally, giving the human side to it is really important. The League of Women Voters on a national level has stances on immigration that I think really value the human side as well. So I thought it went well with our mission as a national organization and the stances we take politically, but also helped us as a local chapter strengthen our partnerships throughout the community.
Okay, I'm going to stand because I'm short and I like to look at people when I talk. So I've been doing immigration law since 1986, and I would say that although you might think it's, you know, perhaps it's become more in the news, it really has always been that way. In 1986, there was the civil war in El Salvador, and where I represented tons of people from El Salvador, but the US said there wasn't a civil war in El Salvador, so they would try to seek asylum, and inevitably the government attorney would say, from what war? There is no war. So this is not a new thing. This has been going on forever. I mean, even the history of the United States and the history of the world. Because the world is a story of immigrants, which is why all these people going out trying to find their DNA, the more you read about it, the more you realize we're all one. And we all came from Africa at one point, and we probably have a combination. And even when you get those test results, more and more they're showing that, no, what they're showing you is where you can find people that are more like you now, not really where you came from. So everybody comes, if you're not an immigrant, and I was an immigrant. I left Cuba, went to Puerto Rico, and then eventually at like 11, my parents made me a U.S. citizen, and then I came to the U.S. So I've been in a way an immigrant twice. So I think a book that may show some people how difficult it can be to leave your country and go to another will make people more aware of what we're talking about. We're not talking about the devil. We're talking about another human being seeking peace, a place for their children to grow up, a place for them to not live in fear, a place for them to have opportunity. So the book is easy to read. I haven't finished it, I confess, but I just got it. That's my excuse. But it's a very easy read, and it's funny, but at the same time it's very, it presents you a human, it puts a human face. It's not a black face, it's not a white face, it's not an indigenous face, it's not a blonde face, it's a face. And that's what we need to remember, and that's what we have to keep telling everybody.
Thank you for that. So as the League and the Library embark on this idea that our community will want to read the book, that people will be open to reading about a very hard topic that is typically not a welcoming idea for your average family to just talk about at the dinner table, right? Or for friends to just chat about how do we deal with this in a good way in our community. I was especially excited that it would make people feel uncomfortable, because the only way that we can actually, create change or reach a place that will inspire folks is to feel a little bit of discomfort in order to, face the barriers in the room. And so this 8-month book discussion began in September, and one of the past presidents of the League actually opened up her home and welcomed different individuals from the community to discuss the book, and I heard that it was quite remarkable. And both of the carries on our panel actually have had their book discussions, and I want to take a moment to have each of them share with us what happened during those discussions and maybe describe the makeup of individuals within your groups.
So I did my book discussion actually in my place of work, and I thought it actually was a coincidence. I think someone from the NEA on the panel was like, let's involve Church World Service, not realizing that a board member was working there. So I kind of got pulled in from two different directions, and it worked out perfectly. But I think it ended up really going perfectly, because in where I work at Church World Service, and if you've been kind of coming to some of the events at this panel, you might have heard of Church World Service a couple times, because I know that there's been a lot of immigration and refugee issues being talked about, a lot of refugee speakers who are resettled by our office, and some of our other employees have been talking about the panels the past couple days. But we do refugee resettlement, and that's what we're most known for. That's what people think of when they think of Church World Service. They think of refugees. When they think of refugees, they think of Church World Service in Lancaster. But a lot of people don't know that we do legal services for all the immigrants of Lancaster. And so even people in our own office can kind of come up short on their knowledge of immigration. I swear there's people in my office who still have no idea what it is that I do or how it works. So I thought it was a great opportunity to, not that it's not important, but shine the spotlight on some of the other populations we serve, which are undocumented immigrants. And we've been trying to do that little by little, just even in changing language. There's been 30 anniversary events for us where it's all about refugees, and refugee soccer tournaments where other clients are included. So we're really trying to push more and more to let the community know what we do as a whole. So I thought it was great. I liked hearing from my staff members about, this was really their first time encountering a story about crossing the border. And I think it had positives and negatives about the nature of the way the story is told. It's a little bit humorous. And so I think some people felt like it took away from the seriousness and the reality of the situation. But I think for some of us who do work with undocumented populations, it was nice to be able to read about the issue in a way that you could enjoy and root for them. And honestly, people do make it across, so it wasn't totally out of the realm of possibility for me. So I thought it was lighthearted and fun, but realistic and not too out of the realm of possibility. So it was interesting to see the different dynamics. Some people thought it was totally inappropriate to add humor in. Some people thought it was perfect and made it bearable. But it was really educational, I think, for some of the people that really only work with refugees in my office. But we had some good discussion. There's a couple people in the conversation who are married to Mexicans or dating Mexicans that are across the border. I think there were 3. So they had some interesting perspectives to bring as well. Because their families have gone through this. So that was pretty much the makeup of my group.
So I have a very different group. I led a group of older women from the Junior League of Lancaster. If you're familiar with that organization, it's another service organization that historically is very white, very upper middle class, and very conservative. Now that's not their kind of makeup now, but historically that is what the makeup is. So it was going to be a very interesting book discussion. However, we had a very large turnout I think there were 10 participants plus myself, and probably 6 or 7 other people who read the book that couldn't come to the discussion. For the demographic makeup of my group, it was about 3 Gen X and millennials, about 5 our parents' age, and then the rest of them over 60. So it was a really interesting intergenerational discussion.
I'm dying here, I'm 58. Oh my God.
But it was a really interesting intergenerational discussion because it was amazing how the women who were over 60 and the younger millennials were all on the same page, and that middle group had a completely different vision and experience with the story than the rest of us did. Which I just thought it was baffling almost that everything they took out of the book was completely different than what the rest of the group had taken out of the book. And a lot of the focus of our discussion was around the humanistic side of the story. It was only 45 minutes into the discussion where anyone even mentioned the word immigration. And I kind of was keeping track of that because it was almost like it was the untouchable subject that nobody wanted to talk about the book. And for those, no one's read the book, but the key point of the story is that they are going to the north to come back to Mexico. If you're familiar with this, the Magnificent Seven or the Seven Samurai stories, Nayeli, who is our main character in the story, wanted to go get a group of men, including her father, in the U.S. to bring back to Mexico for their town. And so...
To protect them.
To protect them, yes, thank you. And so the women in my group were very attached to Nayeli's story. Now, the contrast to that is we had many people in our group who thought the story was very inappropriate. That it's entirely too dark for a community read, and that the humor part of it was really inappropriate. Which is interesting that I didn't know that they had that same conversation at your book discussion, because when I read the book, I didn't get that at all. It was so refreshing to me to have these funny comments because, quite frankly, 19-year-olds make jokes. And these funny kind of things, it's more tongue-in-cheek and they do happen. And no matter who you are or where you are, these things happen. And the darkness of the book is reality, and I felt, and many people in our discussion felt, that if you would have taken that out of the book, it wouldn't have been realistic. And so that was a main point of contention in our book discussion, was between, is this book too dark, and are these characters real, or are you missing the point of the book, that this can be a human story that everybody can relate to. So we spent about an hour on that, and I just found that fascinating. And then when the story, the discussion turned to the immigration part, we had one of our ladies who was in the group who actually was an undocumented immigrant.
Did you know that before?
I did not know that going in, from Venezuela for a good part of her life. And she was able to share her story, and probably halfway through our immigration discussion. And it was interesting once some people in our group put that face on someone that they knew that this was their story, how their feelings about this sort of changed. And I think that that was the biggest takeaway, was that once they had a face of somebody who wasn't just abstract in the story, but somebody who this is very similar to their own story, that they warmed to it. And I think that that was another large takeaway, is that once you humanize the story and humanize the situation, the opinions change.
And if I can just piggyback on that, I think that that's a point. We keep saying humanize, and I think sometimes when people are trying to humanize or do a good things with good intentions, sometimes they can do the opposite. Like we see a lot of times. So I work a lot with undocumented youth, and lately since DACA, or I've heard of Dreamers in DACA lately, everyone wants a story. Like, can you come share on the news? Can you be on our radio? Can you do this? And they want them to just tell all this sad stuff, but they don't really want to know the good things going on. Right. Like, everyone kind of has this picture of what they want, immigrants to have gone through. So for me, I thought that the humor in the story was because with the undocumented people that I work with on a regular basis and spend my time with, they don't all, they do talk about the hard parts of this journey, the sad parts, and it's not easy, but they also make jokes about it. It's a way to cope. It's just normal, and even for us in normal lives, you might have a funeral one day and a wedding the next. Life is always a mix of highs and lows and positives and negatives. Nothing's always completely dark or completely light, so I thought it was appropriate in my perspective.
Should we, I have to say I've had a different experience. I've never had anybody who came to me who joked about how they got here
I should
illegally.
say, not in my immigration office. When I'm doing my immigration work, no. But when I'm talking about their stories, because I do advocacy work on the side, where we tell our stories, where we do advocacy together, we march together, we spend time together, we do team building together, and it is something that maybe they'll joke about, or they'll reclaim words, like calling themselves wetbacks. You're a mojado. Well, we're all in the same group. They'll talk, reclaiming words in their own, and taking the power back, and things like that. They have their humor that they take, but of course not in my office where we're discussing very serious things like their paperwork, and that is a totally different situation. I have my office walls are serious. We're talking about their paperwork, their immigration, their evidence. It's very technical kind of setting, and it's kind of different when we're in a personal space.
I was going to say, maybe we should ask them, what do they think? Would they be interested in a book that has humor when it's painting this story? What do you guys think?
Yes.
I mean, I think that a lot of ethnic writers, particularly ethnic women writers in American literature, do take this humorous stance of telling stories of loss and hardships and war and, dismemberment in a sense, right, from the national body or the other family. One that comes to mind is Firuza Dumont, who wrote her memoir, Funny Farsi. She's got a follow-up memoir.
Oh, that's the one that does the cartoons? Is that the one that does the cartoonist?
You mean, no,
I'm trying to remember the name. I'm thinking of someone else.
Probably.
You're thinking Persepolis.
Maybe
Persepolis, that is who I'm thinking of.
it's also kind of actually.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
It's
is.
humor, but Firuza Dumont actually speaks in her interviews about the ways in which she creates a humorous atmosphere to speak about family and acculturation. So this very problematic in many ways, adaptation to certain trends in the current society. For instance, her uncle, her family relocates to the United States before '79, the Revolution years, and then they go back for a couple of years and they return in the very early '80s. And of course, the attitudes change, things that they notice change. But her uncle in the Matula is very, very obsessed with TV advertisement. So, there was those channels that, with 5 methods to lose weight in 30 days and whatnot. So he buys this like suit, he's basically wrapped up in aluminum foil, and he walks around his neighborhood. They're living in a residential sort of like place, dressed up like that, to kind of like sweat. And all he really manages to accomplish with this is to really stink up the house with sweat rather than losing weight. So I mean, it's really interesting, but as an immigrant myself, I do connect with these stories as moments of sort of like suspension of disbelief, if you want, or empathy, because I experienced similar things as well. One of the things that I was super fascinated with when I was in grad school, my first few years in Louisville, Kentucky, this is 2005 and 6, is with Jerry Springer. Hopefully this does not go on. I could not believe my eyes that was happening, and I was, it was so different from what television offered I come from Romania, so we were recently liberated, quote unquote, I don't know what to call it, from communism, and so the televisions were state-owned at that point. They were not really diverse, and you could only see like one type of kind of like program. And to see people take ownership over their lives and their scandals, which is of course in my culture associated with taboos. You don't wash your dirty laundry in public, so to say, was really fascinating. And it allowed me a way to kind of like feel ease in, grease in, if you want, into the society.
Grease.
That's interesting. And Luis Alberto actually does the same thing. It didn't just happen with Into the Beautiful North, but in all of his work, he uses this method. I haven't read any of the other books. A way of not just poking fun, but giving light to the hardships that people encounter. And also a method of pulling the broader, society to lend their attention. Because most people like to hear, if you say something funny or something ridiculous, they're most interested in wanting to hear more of it, right? And so that's, I think, his way of pulling you in and getting your attention. And then opening up this other kind of darker side of what immigrants are experiencing. So the NEA Big Read Committee, of which Carrie McCullough is a part of, we read the book initially, and then we came together and had a book discussion. And I feel that we were all pretty transparent in sharing that we were so excited, number one, that Lancaster County is going to experience this. And I am excited because we live in a very conservative society in the county. I live in the city, and so things are much differently in the city than they are, on the outskirts of Lancaster. And what excites me the most is that people will be able to read it and feel however they want, but then come together with others and have a discussion. Because that's actually how our communities are going to make a difference, is if they start talking about things instead of kind of internalizing whatever feelings we have.
And hearing different voices.
Exactly.
Different approaches, different points of view.
Yes.
I mean, when I first arrived here, when I first arrived to college in the U.S., and I'm not kidding, in my dorm, and it was an all-girls dorm because my mother forced me to go to an all-girls dorm, It had to be. And on a funny note, the first day I went to the bathroom was in the hallway, I saw a guy. He was brushing his teeth, and I started to laugh because my mother had made sure that I went to an all-girls dorm so there were no men there. And there was this guy brushing his teeth, and I thought, oh my God, this is hilarious. And he goes, why are you laughing? And I said, no, I wasn't going to say, I was thinking of my mother. That's all I knew. But this woman asked me, because as soon as she learned I was from Puerto Rico, so she asked me if I carried a switchblade.
Oh.
And I mean, I was so shocked. First of all, I'd never seen a switchblade, and to be perfectly honest, I understood the word blade, but I had no idea what a switchblade was, but I found out. So I just looked at her and I said, I was going to say no, and then I thought, I'm tired of these comments, so I said, absolutely, I carry one with me at all times. I have one in my sock, let me show it to you. And I leaned forward and she ran into her room, closed the door, and started screaming, please don't hurt me, please don't hurt me. But to be honest, this is a young woman who was raised Jewish. She went to a yeshiva. She had never, I think, really met people who were not Jewish, never mind people who were for her, from another planet. And she probably had heard of West Side Story, and she thought we all danced and, carried switchblades in the gangs. So, I didn't get angry. I just, at first that was my reaction. I was angry then. Then I went up to her and I said, no, for God's sakes. I don't know anybody who has one of those. I don't even know what it is. And it's an introduction. So these kinds of stories are introductions to people who have never been exposed, who've always been surrounded by people who are just like them, look like them, talk like them, think like them. And so it's really an opportunity to see another perspective, and more importantly, see us as human beings. Human beings trying to, not coming over here to steal, not coming over here to rape, not just coming over here to make a life. And, I mean, that's from the times, the slaves didn't come here to make a life. The slaves were brought, let's say the US. But later on, the Japanese, the Chinese, I mean, this is not good.
I have to leave, but because it's the first time I'm hearing about it. So how are you going to organize these reading communities? Like, how are you going to find people?
Yes.
So actually,
do you need
should
an
hear
English?
out.
I mean, I'm an English professor, so naturally I'm interested in everything that involves reading groups, and so to tell about
The Lancaster Public Library, which is the kind of the fiscal agent of the project, on their website, they have a link that will provide you with details of where the book discussions are scheduled. And the host sites, the nonprofits who agreed to host us and identify people in the community to join, you can join any one of them. So I would start first at the Lancaster Public Library's website.
Okay.
And there might be even a link for you to send an email if you're interested in joining.
Is it also on our website?
Not yet.
And in April, there's going to be one in conjunction with Miller's Law Delaware.
Oh, okay.
So probably you'll get some information about that, but it can be found on the website, the public library website.
Thank you for that question. So, ladies, I want to continue with kind of gaining your insight on this great project. Leah invites us to think of the border as more than a stark divide between nations. He reminds us that it's a place of convergence, where meaningful conversations and even love is between the cultures that get together. And I'm going to pose the next question to Susanna. As an immigration lawyer representing individuals who are desperately seeking to become members of our society and U.S. citizens, what are your thoughts about Luis Alberto's method of transcending the media stereotypes, what we all hear on the news and on radio programs and even newsprint, about how the Mexican border, that metaphor of it's so harmful, it's terrible, and it's a horrible idea of this ridiculous wall that is supposed to be built, and how he describes that borders everywhere are a symbol of what divides us, which is so true. You kind of elaborated on that a little earlier.
Yeah. Again, I'll stand up just because then I can't see all of you. Borders are, you can look at borders in different ways. So you can have borders like if you put a wall, okay, there's a border. Like in Hungary, also, and in other places where they really have done that. Or places like Australia where they've sent immigrants to a deserted island where there's absolutely nothing to do and everyone has forgotten about them. Those are all borders. But if you remember, at one point, parts of the U.S. were really Mexican, and through some devious tricks became U.S. territory. So that became the new border, but the original border was different. So I think you have to realize that those borders are a political construct, a social construct. They're not a geographical one in the sense that water doesn't obey those, contamination doesn't obey those rules. And the world is one of immigrants, which is why I said earlier, you really don't know where you came from. You said that we all came from Africa, as far as they know. As far as they know. So in terms of border, you think of some. So you have, let's say, Haiti and Dominican Republic who share one island. Okay? And in many ways, it's as if they were in two planets, to the point that the Dominicans have deported Haitians, or, sorry, I shouldn't say that, have deported Dominicans whose parents were of Haitian descent, whose parents were born in Haiti, but not them. They don't even speak Creole, but the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court of the island, or that part of the island, deported all these Dominicans back to Haiti. That's an example of an artificial border. And even there, it's more than that. It's a political border because those people were born there. They were citizens. They were residents. They had families there. They had jobs there. That was destroyed. So now you have the borders with Canada. Does anybody worry about the border with Canada? Oh, of course not. Of course not. Do they worry about the border with Mexico? Oh, yeah. And so what is the typical, what's a typical, why do you think anybody leaves their country? So you can leave your country because you want something exciting, you want something new. Okay, that's some people. But a vast majority of people leave their country and everything they know looking for a better life. It's that simple. So if you're very poor and you can see no way out, you probably think, you know what, I want out of here. If you live in a country like North Korea, where you can't breathe without instructions from the guy with the funny hair, then what would you do? You try to go to China. Okay? But what happens when you go to China? China has an agreement, they send you back, you go to concentration camp, you die. What happens with the Mexicans? What happens with Salvadorians? What happens with Guatemalans? They're escaping a society where they cannot live, where their children are getting, killed or being forced to join gangs or being raped, and there is no future, none. And so they seek a better world. What do? They come here to work. That's what they do. They come here to work. They don't come here to steal. Yes, of course, like everywhere else in the world, there are going to be some rotten apples, just like there are everywhere. But they come to work. They work 1, 2, 3 jobs. They send money home. They live 15 in one apartment. When I represent the Salvadorians, and the first time I encountered this, I was in shock. What do you mean 10 of you live in a 1-bedroom? And they took turns using the beds. And they worked in the vegetable fields in California before a number of organizations were able to get them things like toilets. So they would work all day and get nothing. That's your typical immigrant. Are they all unskilled? Absolutely not. They have many skills. They may not be the same skills as you may think of. So some may be engineers, doctors, nurses. Some may also have excellent agricultural skills. Some are excellent caretakers. So to think of them as monolithic is ridiculous and offensive. And by and large, I've yet to meet, I can't remember meeting someone, representing someone who didn't really work hard, because they're not entitled to anything. So all they do is work. And mostly work to send money home. Or seek asylum, which is often denied, and which now they're making it even more difficult, but it's always been difficult. Very, very, very difficult, except if you're a white Russian. At some point, if you were a white Russian, you could get asylum, and Cuban, which is how I got asylum. But the Haitians and the Dominicans couldn't get the asylum, even though they lived under other dictatorships. So, when you think of an immigrant, you think of, like I said, hardworking, scared, because they never know when they'll get stopped, and they'll be sent back. Or worse, they'll go to a detention center for 2 or 3 years, maybe wait for a hearing, separated from your family, Many do die on the way here. That's been documented ad nauseum. And I read this the other day. So there is a group of people, a kind group of people who go around putting water in places where they know that people may have run out of water by then. And then these other people come by and slash the bottles. So you have good people and horrible people, because I can't think of another word. Some are very skilled, like I said, doctors, engineers, but they don't know the language. So what do? They become janitors. They're not stupid. They're not ignorant. They just don't speak the language. And it's that simple. And on the other hand, maybe they speak 2 or 3 languages, just not English. And so, you know, you have to change the way you look at them. Another type of immigrant is the immigrant who comes here because their children are ill. And they won't be able to get the medical care that they could get where they come from. And I have represented people like that. Those do exist. So anyway, that's my take on an immigrant, and I think that what one can foresee this book achieving is showing the human side. The human side. This is a naive woman thinking that she can go get the Magnificent Seven and fix the country, or at least fix her town.
Her town, yeah.
Her town, but she does show you the human side, and you see what happens to them. They get, they steal things from them on their way, which happens all the time. So anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, Luis Alberto also adds a little, in his skilled writing and humor, he describes a town that is suffering, but there are great things going on, like Nayeli's aunt, who's actually running for mayor. You know, the fact that there's a theater, and she was able to watch this movie and get inspired and motivated to create this plan for she and her friends to travel to the north. Again, going back to Luis Alberto's ability to write in a way that really makes immigration look very different from what we're used to. My next question is going to be for Karen Carranza. Urea creates a portrait of the border that's rarely seen by most Americans. He injects humanity and complexity into difficult subjects of immigration and border politics. He also takes a serious subject and makes it look a little humorous. Given your ongoing work with building awareness about undocumented citizens, especially the Dreamers, what's your approach to creating understanding and acceptance from communities that you actually come before? I know that you've been traveling to different colleges and universities and dealing with different faith-based organizations. What approach do you use in terms of helping them reach some understanding?
Yeah, it's really quite simple, and Carrie mentioned it earlier. Sitting down and talking with someone has so much power to just kind of transcend any kind of stereotypes or, you know, misrepresentations you might have had. So we started our group of organizing with Dreamers or undocumented youth back in January of 2016, and it was really started by actually a Millersville alum named Audrey Lopez and I, but she had a lot of foresight to do that because at that time, that's when we were first starting to hear about some of the threats that DACA and undocumented communities were under. And so she had the foresight to kind of get organized so that when things started to go down recently, we already had a good foundation and a basis, and we're kind of a well-oiled machine ready to respond. So it's been a while now that we've been going around and educating the community on this issue, but especially lately with this topic being thrust into the news as of September 5th. But usually what we do is we just break into small groups. We'll bring a group of people, we'll do some type of presentation or panel to give background knowledge, break into smaller groups and give people a chance. We do prompts and icebreakers to kind of get things started, but really we give people the chance to ask any questions they have, and then we do a debrief at the end. But it's amazing to me to see how much people don't know about the immigration system. I mean, time after time after time that we do this, it's amazing to see people say, well, I didn't know that you couldn't just apply for citizenship. I didn't know that even if you get married to a U.S. citizen, it doesn't mean you can't fix your status all the time. I didn't know that they can still pay taxes. There's so many things that people just don't understand. They get twisted and altered in the media. And so I think just taking the time to clarify and speak truth into some of the myths and get to know somebody, sit down with someone, share a meal with someone. We've been invited to have meals at churches, and not everyone's on the same page and welcoming at the beginning. But at the end, I think everyone leaves with more knowledge and at least some level of respect for what these families go through, because they realize it's not easy. And maybe, like she said, some of the motivating factors that brought them here and what they're doing here now, they realize that the services or the work that these people bring is valuable to them. These people are putting food on their tables or taking care of their children or giving them health care. Maybe they're working at a hospital. They don't see them as people that they interact with on a daily basis. So I think, we really just try to bring the stories. But we also have a social media campaign and a traveling exhibit and a book. I brought some here today that if anyone wants to take a look. But that's kind of the hook. You see this on social media. It's a little bit similar to Humans of New York. It's portraits and stories. So you read it and you can connect with it. And that's been the basis. But a lot of people, once they see the project, they want to do something more interactive. And that's how we get to the space where we're sitting down together and sharing a meal or having a conversation. So like you said, we're going to Lebanon Valley College. We've been at Millersville here last year. Messiah, different churches in the county. We're really just traveling all over, so.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, the kickoff to this project, the NEA Big Read, we were at the library in their Bates Auditorium, and the exhibit from Invisible Americans was on the walls. And it was just it was compelling to see the beautiful faces of these extraordinary leaders in our community. And then to understand, as you read their stories, and this, I think that the first volume of many, I hope, that they're us. We walk past individuals who have the most interesting and heartbreaking story. And so this is a project that I really, truly feel every community should hear about and certainly support. So my next question is to Carrie McCullough. In his 2011 interview with the National Endowment for the Arts, Udaya shared, at the time that I wrote Into the Beautiful North, I had done so much hard work on hard books. Honestly, my writing rule was, I want to laugh every day. Laughter is a virus that infects everyone with humanity. I thought that if I made the story really entertaining, if I made it an adventure, then it would make the general American reader not only want to read it, but make them maybe root for people they either don't think about or actually look at with some disdain. And again, that I think supports why Luis Alberto writes the way that he does. So Carrie, what are your thoughts about the tone and unusual humor that Luis Alberto uses to make light of this hard topic of immigration?
So none of you have read the book. So in the book, there's a cast of characters, which basically span all kinds of different things. The main character in the book is Nayeli. She's a 19-year-old high school graduate, soccer star, from this tiny little town, and then she has two friends. One is Vampy, who is a goth, because she saw it on the internet on YouTube, which is another part of the story. But so she dresses in all black, she paints her face as white as can be, she has the long, dark, dyed hair, and then another friend, Lulu, who is kind of like Nayeli, but kind of a free spirit and kind of wandering mind. And then they have another friend, so they're all the same age. And then they have another friend named Tacho, who is my favorite character in the book, and who I think brought a lot of the humor to the story. Tacho is a business owner. They never quite say how old he is, but I infer that he is younger, but not as young as the girls, so maybe in his 20s. and he's gay. But no one talks about the fact that he's gay. And he has always wanted to be someone who fit in somewhere, because he doesn't fit in his tiny little town where there are no men. Because all the men have left. And that is why Nayeli and her friends need to go find some of these men to bring back to this town to protect them from the banditos. So there's a little summary of kind of the story and the cast of characters. And then we have some outliers who are really out there, like Nayeli's aunt, who's called La Osa, and she is about this big and a firecracker because she was a bowling champion. And she tells everybody in that town what to do, including the 1 or 2 men that are left over who were too old to go away, and who used to run the town. But now, Aunt Irma runs the town because she is the mayor. And she once had a great love who moved to the US named Chavo. And so she kind of connives Nayeli into finding him for her, which is a secondary part of the story, is that she finds him and he's integral in helping Nayeli then in the US. So we have these outline characters who are all kind of comical. We have Atomiko, who they meet in a trash dump outside of Tijuana, who walks around with a big giant stick and always yells that Atomiko, and like that is his catchphrase, and you can just see like this guy like he's like he thinks he's like a superhero, but he saves them on multiple occasions and gives them a good dose of reality when they think, oh, everything's going to be okay. You know, they have this naive version of what's happening in the story, and he comes by like, excuse me, this is not safe. Like, you don't understand. Like, why do you think that this is safe? Why do you think you can do this by yourself? You need me. You need someone like me, and they do need him, and they don't realize that. So that's another kind of the way that the author uses these outline characters to lighten the tone of the story doesn't take away from the nature of what these girls are doing, but adds the flavor into the fact that they need that dose of reality of what is actually happening. And I just want to back up to something that Susanna said earlier about how these girls in the story had never left Mexico. They never thought they were going to leave Mexico. They only knew Aunt Irma, who once left Mexico. Like, they lived in their reality, and they liked their reality. They don't dislike their reality, except for the fact that the opportunity is not there. So, sure, they might dream of going somewhere else, but that was never going to be their reality, and they seemed okay with it at the beginning of the story, before all these things happened. And I think that that's important to note, that we have our own kind of reality here where everybody looks like that. You know, you're in a community that looks like you, and you're, you know, but then so were these girls. They were in somewhere where they were comfortable, and they had a nice life. Well, it might not have been the most exciting life. They, you know, they dreamed, but they knew that that was it for them. And they were pushed out of that comfort zone by Aunt Irma and pushed into kind of developing this idea where Nayeli thought, oh, it would be fun to go and you know, we need to go, not fun, we need to go and do this and get these men, but she never had that push, and Aunt Irma gave her that push. And I think that that's a way to relate it back to what we're doing here at the library, is that a lot of people in the community, they want to learn more, and they want to know about immigration and the trials and tribulations of what these people are going through, but they have no way to get that information. And by reading this book and being part of these community discussions, they get that push kind of just like Nayeli did.
That is such a great summation in terms of the characters. And I remember during our book discussion, we focused a lot on how each one of us felt about any one of the characters. And I do feel that the book will be, it's going to be that safe, tangible thing that folks will open up about it and talk as a result of it being, described in your book. So at this point, we have about 15 minutes. And I wondered how you all feel about the idea of our community, where we live right now, where we live, play, work, right? How are you all feeling about the welcoming nature of our community and how we are actually welcoming, other than just putting, a sign in the lawn or in the window? Let's talk about that. And this is kind of a conversation, so please share with us what your thoughts are. We're really interested. Yes, sir.
Do you think you guys are going to still be like around even with this new presidency?
Can you speak a little louder, or maybe
Oh,
we
yeah.
can sit closer to you?
Do you think like you guys will still be around trying to make some changes in like the world, like country and all that with this new presidency, with all these ridiculous like immigration laws, with like this new presidency and all that?
Well, here's the thing with our league and the chapter. I assumed presidency 2 years ago. And my goal, my mission for the organization is that we focus on our local community and the things that we can really make happen here. The way that our board members who are so involved in many different organizations and the work that they do in their paid jobs, like this is just our volunteer role. I feel that we can make a difference, regardless of what's happening across the nation. And I try so hard to not listen to what's happening across the nation.
Oh, right.
Because Lancaster really matters.
But I think each person that you talk to, you can make a difference. Because that person can talk to someone else, and that person can talk to someone else. It sounds silly, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, rumors get started because someone makes up something. I mean, I come from a small island, so-and-so. Someone would come up with, that woman, or that guy, oh my God, and then that word would spread. So if you start spreading the word that, somebody says something, for instance, somebody says something about, black people, I don't know about Black Lives Matter, and you go, well, actually, have you thought about it? I mean, if you're in a university setting, that's the best setting ever for that sort of thing. But you can go everywhere and mention it and just throw it out there. And it may seem like nothing, but that is exactly how things change, because people start considering another point of view. I mean, how did slavery end? I mean, as far as it's ended, well, we still hear about slavery, not only African slavery, but we still hear of people sort of getting kidnapped into being slaves. But that is how it changes. People start thinking, people start talking, people start pushing. So it may seem like nothing, but just coming here or a book or talking to other people or stopping them. I've been in groups where I decide, go ahead and say something, go ahead and say it, because I think what they're saying is atrocious. And eventually you say, okay, I have to say something.
And the League of Women Voters as an organization nationally is going to be 100 years old next year. And in Lancaster alone, it's 71st, we had our 70th anniversary. So this isn't our first time at the rodeo. Like, we've been here through the civil rights movement, we've been here through, suffragette movement. We have been at the forefront of getting those voices out since the beginning. So I think that this is just another ebb and flow in our beliefs and our civic duty to get people out there to be an active citizen, one way or the other. It just to be that active citizen is the goal. And whether it's this president or another president, it doesn't really matter. And just also globally, active citizenry, like we're an example. And if you just kind of take a thought about everything that's going on around the globe right now, we're right in the mix of it all. Everything that's happening here is happening everywhere else too. And so the more that we can get our citizens to be active, the more that we give that example to other people.
Well, what is your view on voting? I mean, that would be interesting. What do you guys think of voting?
Well, in 2011, when I stood in the courthouse at Indianapolis and I was sworn in as an American citizen, and I might cry here.
Please do it. This is a safe space for you.
One thing that became really apparent is this notion that we learn in school, that citizenship is a series of rights and responsibilities. So responsibilities and rewards. And I feel that it's really complicated whether you're thinking of one or the other. But we tend to think only about rights, and this entitlements, right, because of citizenship, but it's not just that, you know. Sometimes it takes going out somewhere and crying in front of a bunch of people that you don't know. Or sometimes it takes losing a job as a university professor because you're speaking in defense of people who lost their families and lives in Las Vegas, you know, or going on NPR and talking about the alt-right movement and trying to understand why white men in this country feel so threatened by liberal movements to recognize LGBTQ people and people of color and other kinds of minorities, right? And it's difficult, and I think that as a citizen, as an adult citizen, because I was a citizen of Romania before, but as an adult citizen, you have to be willing to take some risks and to make yourself vulnerable, even if that, you know, attracts kind of like negative attention to you.
That is so true.
And so voting, even if you don't want to vote for, I mean, you feel like there are no options. There's always at least a shadow of a choice that you can make. And so
I invite
vote.
you to consider joining the League of Women Voters if you can, because, like Carrie said, we are in the mix of everything, but most importantly, we are nonpartisan, which means that we're not rah-rahing for any one thing. We're simply interested in ensuring that there's a democracy and that people actually take their individual right and do with it what they can and what they want.
I'm just going to piggyback on you for one more second. I think I work in Kenya, Vietnam, and Ethiopia a lot. And we forget here in the U.S. how our rights and responsibilities of active citizenship and voting and being able to vote matters. Because I work in these communities abroad that they would love to vote, but they're not allowed to because they weren't born into the right family. They came from somewhere else and they can't even get an ID card, a home. They can't go shop at the store because they don't have the right ID card. These are all things that we take for granted here, and I think that the more that we get people out and active, the more that you can help influence others around you in your community to think outside of your own little circle. Second thing I want to say is that League of Women Voters is not just for women. You don't have to be a woman to be a member of the League of Women Voters. It's for everybody, men, women, everybody over the age of 21. 18. So, just keep that in mind.
Welcome you all, please.
Can I also
Yes, Carrie.
And I don't know if this is the best, because I just kind of want to come back to the question you asked about a welcoming community and maybe looking at the frame of this whole conference. I know you've been hearing a lot about immigrant and refugee issues, but something you said just really made me think. Maybe you thought when she said, oh, those poor people, they don't have the ID to go shopping or to vote and things like that. And I noticed in our community there's a lot of welcome for refugees because of what they went through and what their plight is, but not as much sympathy for undocumented immigrants. And so something I want to challenge you to take away from this whole conference is to remember that refugees, before they were selected to be resettled in Lancaster, where we're so welcoming to refugees and have the special signs and refugee welcome stickers, before they were selected to come here, they were undocumented. They were border crossers. They went from Syria to Jordan, or Somalia to Kenya, or Burma to Thailand. They were border crossers, and they were there with no documents to do the things that they need to do. And I was just talking to someone, and I felt so stupid the other day, because I do this for a living, but I was talking to my friend from Mexico who's undocumented, and she was like, oh, I got these pants, and I wish I could take them back, but I guess I'm stuck with them. Take them back. She's like, I can't, I don't have a driver's license. You need to show your driver's license to make returns. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right.
Wow.
You can't return things if you don't have a driver's license. And I'm just thinking, oh. you know. So anyway, my point is to challenge how you think about people like, oh, poor people in Vietnam who can't vote or have no rights, poor people who come as refugees. Well, you know, that's not so different as the people that are here from Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, that we think don't deserve those things because they're in our country, but we think other people, other places do deserve those things.
It's the same situation, just a
Right.
different locale.
Yeah.
So if anyone is interested in participating in one of the 14+ book discussions across Lancaster, go to the library's website, pick one, and they actually will give you a free book as well. That's the other part of this initiative. We got a nice chunk of change, right, to buy books and also to bring in Luis Alberto Orea, who will be at McCaskey High School, but it's just for the school community, on May 18th. And then he will be at the Ware Center downtown on May 19th at 1 o'clock. And you're all invited to join us during that discussion. You'll get to meet him personally.
I have a feeling he's going to be a good speaker.
I think
Fun
so as
speaker.
well, yeah.
Oh, just something earlier, Carrie.
Yes.
You
the
can't
book
sit
that-
here, I'll both answer.
Carrie, she said, like in the story, Naomi, they're happy where they are, and like they know they don't have as many opportunities, but they're actually happy. But they know in the U.S. there might be more opportunity. I've traveled to like DR for service trips, and just in general, that's just one example. But most of the people, like immigrants, they may come here because there's more opportunity, but it's not because they want to take our jobs. They probably would rather stay home with their families because their happy is there, but they know it's better for their families to come here. So it's like, when they come and then they get the backlash and the negative, like the bad treatment, it's like they have no other option, and it's hard. Like it's hard to see that because they probably would rather be home anyway, and you're just making it seem like people here make it seem like they want to be here.
They also don't take the jobs.
Yeah, and
They just do the jobs that others
yeah,
don't
that
want, which is
are
very
not
different.
fun. Yeah.
And that's a key point in the story too, at the end of the story. I'm not going to give it away because I hope you all
Please don't.
read it. But that's a key point at the end of the story that kind of brings the whole thing round. But I'm not going to give it away.
There's, if I can interrupt a little, there's a management theory. I'm not a management professor, I teach English or literature, but there's a theory in management, so I was speaking to an uninformed speaker here, called the bootstraps myth, according to which the idea is that immigrants come here to take our jobs, type of thing, and if you work hard enough, you know, then you can succeed. But scholars have been proving this, that there's an intersectionality that operates on the level of oppression that doesn't really allow people, things that are not as easy as in the story, right? But if you think from a management perspective, when you have a community, an incoming community, who is able to get jobs, right, locally, they're also generating income. They're making an income and they need to spend the money in some way, so they're generating actually more income.
Oh, of course, yeah, that's something that a lot of advocates use in Lancaster especially, to remind bigger entities, and I won't say any names, about the value of actually having immigrants in our midst. And I consider myself really privileged in having been in a room, and I had never been in a room full of dreamers with their parents until Carrie. So she invited me. Amazing. Amazing. So it's 2:24. Any more questions or discussion? See, you're not the only one who's crying. And it's okay. I mean, I cried because of happiness, joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for participating today. I really that you read the book, become members of the league. We need inspiring minds like you to join our work. Okay? Have a great day.